Yuna stood at the tall glass window of the observation deck. She watched the sky turn red with fire. Ships fell through the clouds like black rain. Each one carried death inside it. She was young for a diplomat, only 30 cycles old, but she had worked hard to earn her place on Vorus Prime. This planet was special. 12 different species lived here together in peace. They traded goods. They shared knowledge. They believed that war was something only primitive creatures did. That belief was dying tonight. The Marak Dominion had come without warning. Their warships appeared at the edge of the solar system just 2 days ago. The coalition sent messages of peace. They offered trade agreements. They asked for talks. The Marak answered with weapons. Yuna pressed her hand against the cold glass. Down below, the capital city of Helion was burning. Beautiful towers that had stood for centuries crumbled into dust. The streets where she had walked yesterday were now filled with smoke and screaming. The planetary shields were supposed to protect them. The engineers had promised that nothing could break through. They were wrong. The Marak cut through the shields like they were made of paper. It took them only minutes. An old man walked up beside Yuna. His name was Elder Tovin. He led the Refugee Council now. His face was tired and gray. He had not slept since the attack began. "We need to move to the underground bunkers," Tovin said. His voice was soft and sad. "The surface is lost." Yuna did not turn away from the window. "How many did we save?" "Perhaps 50,000, maybe less." Tovin closed his eyes. There were 2 million people in Helion alone. The number hit Yuna like a punch to her stomach. 2 million lives, families, children, teachers, artists, workers, all gone in just 2 days. "The coalition fleet," she said. "When will they arrive?" Tovin was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his words carried no hope. "They are not coming. Our allied worlds say they cannot spare ships. They are afraid the Marak will attack them next." Yuna finally turned to look at him. "They are abandoning us?" "They are protecting themselves." Tovin put his old hand on her shoulder. "I do not blame them. The Marak have conquered 17 worlds. No one has ever beaten them in battle. What could our allies do except die with us?" They walked together through the hallways of the government building. Soldiers ran past them carrying wounded civilians. The air smelled like blood and burning metal. Yuna helped an old woman who had fallen. The woman was crying for her daughter. Yuna had no words to comfort her. The underground bunkers were deep beneath the city. They had been built long ago when the first settlers came to Vorus Prime. Back then, the planet had dangerous storms. The bunkers protected people from the wind and lightning. Now, they would try to protect people from something far worse. Thousands of refugees filled the tunnels. They sat on the cold floor with nothing but the clothes on their backs. Children cried for parents they would never see again. The old and sick lay on thin blankets, waiting for medicine that would not come. Yuna found a small room where the council leaders had gathered. There were 5 of them left. The others had died in the first attack. Their faces showed the same thing she felt inside: fear, despair, the knowledge that the end was coming. "We have sent distress signals on every frequency," said a council member named Drix. He was a scientist, not a fighter. His hands shook as he spoke. "No one has answered." "The Marak are jamming long-range communications," another council member added. "Even if someone wanted to help, they may not know we are in trouble." Tovin sat down heavily in his chair. "The bunker doors are strong, but they will not hold forever. The Marak have drilling machines. They have bombs that can crack stone. I estimate we have 10 days, perhaps less." The room fell silent. 10 days. That was all the time they had left in this universe. Yuna thought about her family on the other side of the planet. She thought about her friends, her teachers, the old vendor who sold her breakfast every morning. Were they dead? Were they hiding somewhere? Just as scared as she was? She would probably never know. "There must be something we can do," she said. Her voice was weak, but she had to try. "Some weapon we have not used? Some ship we can send for help?" Drix shook his head. "Our weapons are for peacekeeping. They are not meant for real war. And our ships, he laughed bitterly. Our fastest ship would take 60 days to reach the nearest coalition world. We will be dead long before then. Yuna looked at the floor. She had spent her whole life believing in the coalition. She believed that peace was the highest goal. She believed that civilized species did not need violence. Now she understood how foolish those beliefs were. When monsters came with swords, speeches about peace meant nothing. The hours passed slowly in the bunker. Yuna helped where she could. She carried water to the thirsty. She held the hands of the dying. She told children that everything would be okay, even though she knew it was a lie. On the third day underground, a technician came running into the council room. His eyes were wide with something Yuna had not seen in a long time. It looked almost like hope. "We received a signal," he said, breathing hard. "It is weak. It came from very far away. But someone answered our distress call." Tovin stood up so fast his chair fell over. "Who? Which coalition world?" The technician looked at his data pad. His face showed confusion. "It is not a coalition world. The signal came from a quarantine system at the edge of the galaxy." He paused. "A planet called Earth." The council members looked at each other. Yuna saw fear in their eyes. She knew why. Everyone knew about Earth. 40 years ago, the coalition had discovered humans. They sent diplomats to welcome them into galactic society. But what the diplomats found scared them deeply. Earth was a world of endless wars. Humans had spent their entire history killing each other. They built weapons that could destroy whole cities. They celebrated warriors and soldiers. Violence was in their blood. The coalition voted to quarantine Earth. The humans were too dangerous, too unpredictable, too savage. They were locked away and forgotten. Now those same savages were answering their call. "They cannot help us," Drix said nervously. "They are primitive. They do not even have faster-than-light travel." Tovin picked up his chair and sat back down. His face was thoughtful. "That was 40 years ago. Much can change in 40 years." Yuna stared at the datapad in the technician's hand. Earth, the forbidden world, the planet of warriors. She did not know what to feel. Hope seemed foolish. But for the first time in days, the darkness in her chest felt a little lighter. Maybe, just maybe, someone was coming. Admiral Kang Minho had served in the military for 35 years. He had seen many things. He had fought in 3 wars on Earth. He had watched humanity reach for the stars. He had been there when the coalition told humans they were not welcome in the galaxy. That last memory still burned in his chest like hot coal. He stood now in the great hall of the United Earth Defense Council. The room was filled with generals, admirals, and politicians. Their faces showed different emotions. Some were angry, some were curious, some looked afraid. On the large screen at the front of the room, a distress signal played on repeat. The voice was alien, speaking in a language that sounded like music, but the translation software made the words clear. "This is Vorus Prime. We are under attack. The Marak Dominion has invaded. Our defenses have failed. Millions are dead. Please, if anyone can hear this, we need help. We are running out of time." The message ended. The room was silent. General Park Sora was the first to speak. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and gray hair. She had commanded armies in some of Earth's bloodiest conflicts. Her voice was cold as ice. "They rejected us," she said. 40 years ago, they called us animals. They locked us in our own solar system like prisoners. They said we were too violent to join their precious coalition." She crossed her arms. "Now they beg for our help?" Minho understood her anger. He felt it too. The memory of that day still hurt. The coalition diplomats had looked at humans with fear and disgust. They had read Earth's history like it was a horror story. They saw the world wars. They saw the nuclear weapons. They saw the constant fighting that had marked every century of human existence. "You are not ready," they had said. Perhaps in 1,000 years, when you have learned peace. Then they left. They placed warning beacons around the solar system. Any human ship that crossed the boundary would be destroyed. Earth was a prison planet, but humans did not give up. They never gave up. In 40 years, they built ships that could cross the stars in days instead of months. They created weapons more powerful than anything the Coalition had ever seen. They trained soldiers who could fight in any environment. They did all this in secret, preparing for the day when they would prove the Coalition wrong. Now that day had come, but not in the way anyone expected. President Yoon Ji-ho raised his hand. The room fell quiet. He was an older man with a calm face and tired eyes. He had led Earth through difficult times. His voice carried weight. "I want to hear all opinions," he said. "This is not a small decision. If we send help, we reveal ourselves to the galaxy. The Coalition will know what we have built. The Marak will know we exist. There may be consequences we cannot predict." A young colonel near the back stood up. His name was Ryu Jinsu. "With respect, sir, this is not our fight. The Coalition made it clear they do not want us. Why should our soldiers die for aliens who hate us?" Many heads nodded in agreement. The anger in the room was real. 40 years of isolation had left deep wounds. But then another voice spoke. It belonged to Captain Shin Unji, a pilot who had tested the first faster-than-light ships. She was known for speaking her mind. "They do hate us," she said slowly. "Or they did. But I have a question for everyone here. What kind of species do we want to be?" The room grew quiet again. Unji continued. "The Coalition judged us by our worst moments. They saw our wars, our weapons, our violence. They decided that was all we were. Maybe they were right to be afraid." She paused. "But they were wrong about what our violence means. We do not fight because we love killing. We fight to protect the people we love. We fight for those who cannot fight for themselves." She looked around the room at the faces of her fellow humans. Right now, millions of innocent people are dying on Vorus Prime. Children, families, people who have done nothing wrong. They called for help, and we are the only ones who answered. Her voice grew stronger. "If we turn away, we prove that the Coalition was right about us. We prove that we are nothing but selfish savages. But if we go, if we fight for strangers who feared us, we show the galaxy what humanity really is." Admiral Minho felt something stir in his chest. It was pride. Pure, burning pride. General Park Sora uncrossed her arms. Her cold expression softened slightly. "The girl has a point," she admitted. "I am still angry. I will probably be angry for the rest of my life. But anger is not a reason to let innocents die." President Yoon Ji-ho looked around the room. "We will vote," he said. "All those in favor of sending aid to Voras Prime." Hands rose, one by one, then all at once. Minho raised his hand. So did Sora. Even the young colonel who had argued against intervention slowly lifted his arm. The vote was almost unanimous. Yoon nodded. "Then it is decided. Admiral Minho, you will lead the operation. How soon can our forces be ready?" Minho had already been planning in his head. 6 hours to assemble the first orbital drop legion. 12 hours to reach Vorus Prime at maximum speed. "Do it," Yoon said. "And Admiral, make sure the galaxy remembers this day." The soldiers began to move immediately. Messages went out to bases around the world. Pilots ran to their ships. Ground troops grabbed their weapons and armor. The great machine of human warfare rumbled to life. In the staging area of the main military base, 2,000 soldiers gathered. They were the best of the best, men and women who had trained for years, waiting for a chance to prove themselves. Now that chance had come. Sergeant Choi Hana checked her rifle for the 10th time. She was nervous, but she did not show it. A good sergeant never showed fear in front of her squad. Private Lee Nari stood beside her. She was the youngest in the unit, just 19 years old. Her hands shook slightly as she loaded her equipment. Are you scared? Hana asked quietly. Nari nodded. A little? I have never been in real combat before. Hana put a hand on her shoulder. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. Just remember your training and watch out for your teammates. We take care of each other. That is how we survive. Nari took a deep breath. Sergeant, do you think we can really win? The reports say the Marak have never been defeated. Hana smiled. It was not a kind smile. It was the smile of a wolf. The Marak have never fought humans before. They have no idea what is coming. The ships began to lift off. One by one, they rose into the dark sky, then vanished into the stars. Earth's warriors were on their way, and the galaxy would never be the same. Commander Braun stood on the bridge of his warship and looked down at the burning planet. Vorus Prime was almost his. A few more days, and every living thing on this world would bow to the Marak Dominion. He was pleased with himself. This conquest had been easy. The coalition species were weak. They talked about peace and understanding. They built beautiful cities and created wonderful art, but they had forgotten how to fight. When bronze warriors came with weapons and fire, the coalition crumbled like dry leaves. Braun was tall, even for a Marak. His skin was dark gray, thick as armor. His eyes were red, designed by nature to see in the dark. His species had evolved as hunters on a world where only the strong survived. War was in their blood, just as it had been for 1,000,000 years. Status report, he growled at his officers. The surface is 90% secured, one answered. Resistance remains only in the underground bunkers. We estimate 50,000 survivors hiding beneath the capital city. Braun nodded. Begin drilling operations. I want those bunkers opened within 5 days. No survivors. The officers bowed and hurried to obey. Braun turned back to the window. Another easy victory. The coalition had made it so simple. They refused to build real weapons. They refused to train real soldiers. They believed that talking could solve all problems. What fools they were. A sudden alarm broke his thoughts. Red lights flashed across the bridge. Officers shouted in confusion. Commander! Unknown contacts detected in high orbit. Braun moved to the sensor station. On the screen, he saw ships appearing from faster-than-light travel. They were strange ships, unlike anything in Coalition records. They were angular, covered in armor, built for war rather than beauty. How many? Braun demanded. 17 ships, Commander. They are not responding to our signals. Braun felt something he had not felt in a long time. It was not quite fear, it was caution. What species are they? The officer checked his data. His face showed confusion. The ship designs do not match any known coalition member. Checking quarantine records now. He paused. Commander, the ships appear to be from a quarantined system. A planet called Earth. Braun had heard stories about Earth. A primitive world filled with violent creatures who had not yet earned their place among the stars. The coalition had locked them away like dangerous animals. Primitives, Braun said with disgust. What are they doing here? Before anyone could answer, the human ships began to move. They spread out in a formation that Braun recognized. It was an attack formation. But that made no sense. 17 ships against his fleet of 40? It was suicide. They are launching objects, an officer reported. Thousands of small objects falling toward the planet's surface. Braun looked at the sensor data. His eyes widened. Those were not bombs. They were drop pods, each one carrying a soldier. Target the pods, he ordered. Destroy them before they land. His ships opened fire. The sky above Vorus Prime lit up with weapons fire. Dozens of pods exploded in the air, hundreds more. But there were so many. They fell like rain, too fast and too many to stop them all. On the ground, Sergeant Choi Hana felt her drop pod shake violently. Warning lights flashed around her. The heat inside was terrible. She could hear explosions outside as Marak weapons found their targets. Some of those explosions were her friends dying. She pushed the fear down deep inside herself. There was no time for fear now. There was only the mission. The pod's computer counted down. 3, 2, 1. The bottom of the pod blew open, and Hana fell the last few meters to the ground. She hit hard, rolled, and came up with her rifle already in her hands. Around her, hundreds of other pods were landing. Human soldiers poured out like angry ants. They did not stop to form lines or wait for orders. They ran straight toward the nearest Marak positions and started shooting. The Marak ground troops were surprised. They had expected the coalition to send diplomats, not soldiers. They had expected talking, not fighting. What they got was something they had never seen before. Hana led her squad through the ruins of Helion. Marak warriors appeared ahead of them. They were big, strong, and confident. They had conquered 17 worlds. They did not fear anything. They learned to fear humans that day. Hana fired her rifle. The first Marak fell. She kept firing, moving forward, never stopping. Her squad moved with her, covering each other, working as a single, deadly machine. The Marak returned fire, but they were confused. No species had ever attacked them like this. No species had ever been so aggressive, so fast, so completely unafraid of death. In the underground bunkers, the refugees heard the sounds of battle above. At first, they thought it was the Marak finally breaking through. They prepared for the end. Then, the technician checked the sensors. His mouth fell open. "Someone is fighting back," he said. "Someone is fighting the Marak on the surface." Yuna pushed through the crowd to look at the screen. She saw weapons fire. She saw explosions. She saw Marak positions being destroyed one by one. "Who?" Elder Tovan asked. "The coalition fleet?" The technician shook his head slowly. "The signals matched the ships that answered our distress call. The ones from Earth." Yuna could not believe it. The humans had actually come. The primitive savages that the coalition had rejected had crossed the galaxy to fight for strangers. On the surface, the battle grew more intense. Commander Braun watched the reports with growing disbelief. His warriors were dying. Not just a few, hundreds. The humans fought like nothing he had ever seen. They did not retreat when wounded. They did not surrender when outnumbered. They pushed forward, always forward, attacking with a fury that shocked even the Marak hunters. Lieutenant Kim Daewon found his squad trapped in a collapsed building. Marak soldiers surrounded them on all sides. By any reasonable measure, they should surrender or retreat. Daewon looked at his soldiers. They were tired, wounded, and running low on ammunition. But their eyes were not defeated. They were angry. "We go through them," Daewon said simply. His squad nodded. They understood. Surrender was not in their vocabulary. They charged. The Marak expected them to hide, to wait, to die slowly. Instead, the humans ran straight into their guns. Some humans fell, others stepped over their bodies and kept fighting. They closed the distance in seconds. And then the battle became personal. In close combat, the Marak had always been supreme. Their size and strength made them unstoppable. But humans had been fighting in close combat for thousands of years. They had invented martial arts. They had perfected the art of killing with their bare hands. The Marak learned this the hard way. By the end of the first day, the humans had secured 3 sectors of Helion. They had lost 400 soldiers, but they had killed 3,000 Marak. Braun received the report in silence. For the first time in his long career, he felt something cold in his stomach. It was the beginning of fear. The Marak had studied war for 1,000,000 years. They knew every strategy, every tactic, every trick that armies could use. They had defeated every species they had ever faced. Their confidence was built on a mountain of victories. That confidence was crumbling now. Commander Braun sat in his command center and stared at the battle maps. Red marks showed Marak positions. Blue marks showed human positions. Every hour, there was more blue and less red. His second in command, A warrior named Krell stood beside him. Krell was old and experienced. He had fought in 12 conquests. His body carried scars from 100 battles. But even he looked confused now. I do not understand them, Krell admitted. They fight like no species I have ever seen. Braun nodded slowly. He had been thinking the same thing for days. When the coalition species fought, they followed patterns. They formed defensive lines and waited for attackers. They retreated when the odds were against them. They surrendered when defeat was certain. These were logical behaviors. They made sense. The humans did none of these things. Yesterday, we surrounded a group of 50 humans in the eastern sector, Krell continued. We outnumbered them 5-1. Standard coalition forces would have surrendered immediately. These humans attacked us instead. They broke through our lines and escaped. We lost 70 warriors, capturing 5 of them. Braun remembered the report. It had made him angry at the time. Now it just made him worried. The prisoners, he said. Have we learned anything from them? Krell shook his head. They do not talk. We have tried pain, threats, everything. They just look at us and say nothing. One of them actually smiled when we hurt her. Braun felt a chill run through his scales. What kind of creatures smiled when they were being tortured? On the other side of the city, Sergeant Choi Hana was leading her squad through the ruins. They had been fighting for 5 days now. They had not slept more than 2 hours at a time. Their bodies were exhausted, but their spirits were still strong. The war on Vorus Prime was unlike anything humans had fought before. The enemy was bigger and stronger. The environment was alien. There was no support from home, no backup coming if they failed. But in many ways, it was exactly like every war humanity had ever fought. It was ugly, brutal, and terrifying. And humans had been fighting ugly, brutal, terrifying wars since they first picked up sticks and stones. Movement ahead, whispered Private Baek Junho. He was the squad's scout, a quiet young man with sharp eyes. Hana raised her fist, signaling the squad to stop. They melted into the shadows of a collapsed building. Ahead, a Marek patrol was moving through the street. There were 20 of them, big and heavily armed. The smart thing to do was wait for them to pass. Avoid contact. Save ammunition. That was what the training manual said. Hana looked at her squad. 6 soldiers, tired and wounded. 20 Marek ahead. The odds were bad. She smiled that wolf smile again. We take them, she said quietly. Her soldiers did not question the order. They moved into position, silent as ghosts. When Hana gave the signal, they attacked. The Marek never knew what hit them. Grenades exploded in their midst. Bullets cut through their ranks. Before they could organize a defense, the humans were among them, fighting hand to hand. Private Park Minji was small, even for a human woman. The Marek warrior she faced was 3 times her size. He swung his weapon at her head, confident in his strength. Minji ducked under the blow, stepped inside his reach, and drove her knife into the gap between his armored plates. The Marek fell. Minji was already moving to the next target. In 30 seconds, the patrol was dead. Not one human was lost. This was what the Marek could not understand. Coalition species fought to survive. They avoided risk. They valued their own lives above all else. Humans were different. They had learned long ago that sometimes you had to risk everything to win. They had learned that aggression could beat superior numbers. They had learned that fear was just another emotion to be controlled and used. The Marek were hunters. But humans were something stranger and more dangerous. Humans were the species that had hunted everything on their world, including each other. Back at the Marek Command Center, Braun received another report. Another patrol destroyed, another position lost. His forces still outnumbered the humans 20-1, but that advantage meant nothing. They are not fighting to survive, Braun said slowly, finally understanding. They are fighting to win. They do not care about their own lives. Then they are insane, Krell said. Braun shook his head. No, they are something worse. They are dedicated. They believe in something more important than themselves. He paused. We have never fought a species like this. Our usual tactics do not work. Then what do we do? Braun looked at the maps again. He was a warrior. He had never retreated from any battle. But he was also not stupid. The humans were teaching him something new about war. We need more soldiers, he said finally. Send a message to the Dominion fleet. Tell them to send reinforcements, as many as they can spare. Far from the battle, in the underground bunkers, Yuna was watching the same reports. But for her, they brought hope instead of fear. The humans were winning. Slowly, block by block, they were pushing the Marak back. They were bleeding for every meter of ground, but they did not stop. Elder Tovin stood beside her. His old face showed wonder and confusion. I have lived for 200 years, he said softly. I have studied many species. I thought I understood the galaxy. He shook his head. I was wrong. I never understood humans. Yuna nodded. None of us did. We saw their wars and their weapons and their violent history. We thought that made them dangerous monsters. They are dangerous, Tovin agreed, but not monsters. Not anymore. Look at them, Yuna. They came across the galaxy to fight for strangers who rejected them. They are dying for people they have never met. His voice cracked slightly. That is not what monsters do. Yuna thought about the Coalition's decision 40 years ago. They had been so sure that humans were a threat. They had been so confident that keeping them locked away was the right thing to do. Now those same humans were their only hope. Outside, the battle continued. Somewhere in the burning ruins of Helion, a young human soldier was fighting for a world that was not her own, against enemies she had never known existed, for people who had called her species savages. And she was winning. Private Lee Nari had joined the military to pay for school. That was the simple truth. Her family was not rich. Her grades were good, but not good enough for a full scholarship. The military offered money for education in exchange for service. It seemed like a fair deal at the time. She never expected to actually fight a war. She never expected to leave Earth. She never expected to be crouching in the ruins of an alien city, covered in blood and dust, with a rifle in her hands. But here she was. Nari was alone. Her squad had been separated during a Marak ambush. She had lost her radio when a building collapsed. For the past 3 hours, she had been moving through the empty streets, trying to find other humans. The city was a graveyard. Bodies lay everywhere. Most were aliens, the civilians who had not escaped in time. Their skin was different colors. Their shapes were strange, but their dead eyes all looked the same. Empty, sad, gone forever. Nari tried not to look at them. She tried to focus on finding her friends, but it was hard. Every body reminded her that real people had died here. Real families had been destroyed. She heard a sound. It was soft, almost too quiet to notice, but Nari's training made her ears sharp. She moved toward the sound, rifle ready. Behind a pile of broken stones, she found a child. The child was small, maybe the size of a human 5-year-old. Its skin was copper-colored and smooth. Its eyes were large and bright green, wet with tears. It wore torn clothes that had probably been beautiful once. Nari did not know what species it was. She did not speak its language, but she understood the look on its face perfectly. It was terrified, and it was alone. Slowly, Nari lowered her rifle. She held up her hands to show she meant no harm. "Hey there," she said softly. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." The child did not understand her words, but it seemed to understand her tone. It stopped crying, just a little. Nari moved closer, slowly. She knelt down in front of the child. Up close, she could see it was injured. There was a cut on its arm, still bleeding. Its clothes were burned in several places. "Where are your parents?" Nari asked, even though she knew the child could not answer. The child looked toward a nearby building. It was collapsed, completely destroyed. No one could have survived inside. Nari's heart broke. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." She did not know what to do. She was a soldier, not a babysitter. She was supposed to be fighting the enemy, not caring for alien children. But she could not just leave this kid here alone. She could not walk away and pretend she had not seen those terrified green eyes. She made a decision. It was probably stupid. Her sergeant would probably yell at her. But she did not care. "Come on," she said, reaching out her hand. "I'll keep you safe." The child hesitated. Then, slowly, its small copper hand reached out and grabbed Nari's fingers. They moved together through the city. Nari carried the child on her back when it got too tired to walk. She shared her water. She gave the child her last food bar. The kid did not like the taste, but it was hungry enough to eat anyway. Hours passed. The sounds of battle grew closer. Nari knew she needed to find shelter soon. She found a partially intact building and carried the child inside. They hid in a corner behind some fallen furniture. Nari kept her rifle ready. Then she heard footsteps, heavy footsteps, Marak footsteps. 5 Marak soldiers entered the building. They were searching, looking for survivors to kill. Their red eyes scanned the darkness. Nari's heart pounded in her chest. She looked at the child beside her. Its green eyes were wide with terror. It knew what those footsteps meant. Nari had a choice. She could hide and hope the Marak did not find them, or she could reveal herself and try to draw the Marak away while the child escaped. It was not really a choice at all. She put her hand on the child's head and pointed toward a hole in the back wall. She made a running motion with her fingers. The child seemed to understand. It nodded. Nari took a deep breath. Then she stood up and started shooting. The first Marak fell before it even knew what was happening. The second turned toward her, and she shot it in the face. The third and fourth raised their weapons. Behind her, she heard small feet running away. Good, the child was escaping. Nari killed the third Marak. The fourth one's shot hit her shoulder. The pain was incredible. She screamed but kept fighting. She killed the fourth one. The fifth Marak was too close now. She could not bring her rifle around fast enough. It swung a blade at her. She caught the blade with her bare left hand. She felt the metal cut into her palm, cutting deep, slicing through muscle. Blood poured between her fingers, but her right hand still held her knife. She drove the knife into the Marak's throat. It fell on top of her, heavy and dead. Nari lay there in the darkness, bleeding from her shoulder and her hand. The pain was like fire. She could feel herself getting weaker, but the child was safe. She had done her job. Footsteps approached. Nari tried to raise her knife, ready to fight again, but she was too weak. She could barely lift her arm. A face appeared above her. It was not Marak. It was human. "Medic!" someone shouted. "We have a wounded soldier here." Hands lifted the dead Marak off her. Other hands pressed bandages against her wounds. Nari looked up at the soldiers around her. They were from a different unit, sent to search for survivors. "There's a kid," she managed to say. "An alien kid. I told it to run." One of the soldiers nodded. "We found it outside. It's safe." It kept pointing at this building and crying. Nari smiled weakly. The kid had tried to bring help. Smart kid. As the medics carried her away, she passed Yuna in the street. The alien diplomat had come up from the bunkers to help with the wounded. Yuna looked at Nari with confusion and wonder. "Why?" Yuna asked. "Why would you risk your life for one of our children?" Nari's voice was weak, barely a whisper, but she answered anyway, "Because that's what people do." Yuna did not fully understand. She came from a galaxy where species helped only their own kind. But as she watched the human soldiers carry their wounded comrade away, she began to understand something important. Humans did not fight for glory or territory or power. They fought for each other. And apparently, they fought for anyone who needed protection, even strangers, even aliens who had rejected them, even one small child with copper skin and green eyes. The battle for Vorus Prime had lasted 19 days. 19 days of constant fighting. 19 days of blood and fire and death. Captain Otejo looked at the casualty reports. 700 human soldiers were dead. 400 more were wounded so badly they could not fight anymore. Out of the original 2,000, only 900 were still standing. Any normal army would have retreated by now. Any logical commander would have called for evacuation. The losses were too high. The odds were too bad. But humans were not normal. And Tejo was not a logical commander. He was also not alone anymore. 2 days ago, 3 new ships had arrived from Earth. 3,000 fresh soldiers who had volunteered the moment they heard their brothers and sisters were fighting alone. They came with new weapons, new supplies, and new hope. The war was about to enter its final phase. In the underground bunkers, Elder Tovin met with Captain Tejo. The old alien looked healthier now. Hope had returned to his eyes. But he was still confused by what he was seeing. "You have lost so many," Tovin said, looking at the casualty lists. "More than half your original force. Why do more of your people keep coming to die?" Tejo thought about the question. It was a fair question. From a logical perspective, what humans were doing made no sense. "Let me tell you a story," Tejo said finally. "Long ago on Earth, there was a battle. 300 soldiers stood against an army of thousands. They knew they would die. They could have retreated. They could have surrendered. Instead, they chose to fight." Tovin listened carefully. "Those 300 soldiers all died," Tejo continued, "every single one. But their sacrifice inspired others. It showed the world that some things are worth dying for. That courage can defeat fear. That the strong should protect the weak." He looked at Tovin with steady eyes. "We do not leave people behind. Not our own soldiers. Not you. Not anyone who needs help. That is what it means to be human." Tovin was silent for a long moment. Then he bowed his head. It was a gesture of deep respect among his species. "I think I understand now," he said quietly. "We thought your violence made you dangerous. We were right, but we did not understand what your violence protected. It protects everyone you care about, and somehow you care about everyone." Tejo smiled. "Something like that." The final assault began at dawn on the 20th day. Human forces had spent days preparing. They had mapped every Marak position. They had found every weakness in the enemy defenses. They had planned every detail of the attack. Sergeant Choi Hana led her squad toward the central command building, where Commander Braun was hiding. Other squads attacked from different directions. The plan was simple. Hit the enemy from every side at once. Give them no time to react, no chance to organize. The Marak fought back hard. They knew this was the last battle. If they lost here, they lost everything. Desperation made them dangerous. Hana ducked behind a wall as plasma fire scorched the air above her head. One of her soldiers fell, hit in the chest. She grabbed his body and pulled him to cover, but it was too late. He was already dead. She did not have time to mourn. She would mourn later. Now she had to fight. "Push forward!" she screamed. "Don't give them time to breathe." Her squad obeyed. They moved through the Marak defenses like water through cracks in a dam. They lost soldiers with every meter they advanced, but they did not stop. The battle was brutal. Room by room, corridor by corridor. Every corner could hide an enemy. Every shadow could mean death. Private Park Minji took a blade to her arm, but kept fighting. Corporal Yoon Sojun was shot twice, but refused to stop until the bleeding made him pass out. These were humans at their most dangerous. Wounded, exhausted, and absolutely determined. Commander Braun watched the battle from his command center. He had seen many wars. He had conquered many worlds. But he had never seen anything like this. His warriors were dying. Not just losing, dying. The humans killed them with weapons, with knives, with their bare hands. Nothing stopped them. Nothing scared them. For the first time in his life, Braun understood what it meant to face a truly dangerous enemy. The doors to his command center exploded inward. Human soldiers poured through, firing as they came. Braun's personal guards fell in seconds. Then the firing stopped. Braun stood alone in the middle of the room, surrounded by human weapons. Sergeant Choi Hana stepped forward. Her armor was dented and burned. Her face was covered in blood and dirt, but her eyes were clear and cold. "Commander Braun," she said, "your forces are defeated. Surrender now and your surviving soldiers will be treated fairly." Braun laughed. It was a harsh, bitter sound. "The Marak do not surrender. We fight until death." Hana nodded. She had expected this answer. "Your people should have stayed hidden," Braun snarled. "You are safe in your little quarantine zone. Now the Dominion knows you exist. We will come for your world. We will burn your cities. We will exterminate your species." He raised his weapon, ready for one final attack. Hana was faster. Her rifle fired once. Braun fell. Hana stood over his body. "Let them come," she said quietly. "We've been waiting." The battle ended soon after. Without their commander, the remaining Marak forces lost their will to fight. Some surrendered, others tried to escape, none succeeded. Vora's Prime was free. When the news reached the underground bunkers, the refugees did not believe it at first. They had been waiting to die for so long that hope felt strange and unfamiliar. But then the bunker doors opened. Sunlight poured in for the first time in 20 days. And standing in that light were human soldiers, battered and bleeding, but victorious. Yuna walked outside and looked at the sky. It was blue again. The smoke was clearing. Somewhere in the distance, she could hear people crying, but these were tears of joy, not grief. She found Captain Tejo near the entrance. He looked tired. The weight of the battle showed on his face. But he was smiling. "Thank you," Yuna said. The words felt too small for what she was feeling. "Thank you for everything." Tejo shook his head. "Don't thank us yet. This is just the beginning. The Marak Dominion won't let this defeat go unanswered. They'll come back with more ships, more soldiers." Yuna felt a chill of fear. Then she remembered what she had seen over the past 20 days. She remembered the humans who had died to protect strangers. She remembered the courage that never broke, even when everything seemed lost. "If they come," she said slowly, "will Earth help us again?" Tejo looked at her with steady eyes. "You won't have to ask." And Yuna believed him. 6 months had passed since the liberation of Vora's Prime. The galaxy had changed. News of the battle spread to every corner of known space. Species that had never heard of Earth suddenly knew the name. They heard the stories. They watched the recordings. They learned what humans had done. 942 human soldiers had died on Vora's Prime. More than 1,000 had been wounded. They had fought against an enemy that outnumbered them 20-1. They had won. But more than the victory, the galaxy talked about why humans had come. The coalition had rejected them. They owed nothing to the aliens who had called them savages. Yet when the distress call came, they answered. They crossed the stars to fight for strangers. This was something new, something the galaxy had never seen before. Ambassador Yuna stood before the United Earth Assembly. The Great Hall was filled with humans, politicians, military leaders, scientists, ordinary citizens who had come to witness history. They all watched as the alien diplomat walked to the center of the stage. She was different now. The fear and confusion she had felt during the war were gone. In their place was understanding and respect. 6 months ago, my people were dying, she began. Her voice was steady and clear. The Marak had conquered our world. Our allies had abandoned us. We had lost all hope. We thought we were going to die. The hall was silent. Everyone listened. Then your soldiers came. They fell from the sky like fire. They fought for people they had never met. They died for people who had treated them badly. Yuna paused. I watched your soldiers bleed for my people. I watched them protect our children. I watched them refuse to give up, even when giving up was the only logical choice. She looked around the room at the faces of humans, young and old, men and women, all different, yet all sharing something that Yuna now understood. 40 years ago, the Coalition looked at humanity and saw only violence. We saw your wars. We saw your weapons. We were afraid. She nodded slowly. We were right to be afraid. You are the most dangerous species we have ever encountered. Some of the humans in the audience shifted uncomfortably, but Yuna smiled. But we were wrong about what that danger meant. You are not dangerous because you enjoy killing. You are dangerous because when you love something, when you care about something, nothing in the universe can stop you from protecting it. She reached into her robe and pulled out a small golden symbol. It was the mark of the Galactic Coalition, the highest honor they could give. I am here today as the representative of the Coalition Council. I carry a message from 12 species, 500 worlds, and 3 trillion beings. She held up the symbol so everyone could see. Humanity, the Galactic Coalition, formally requests your membership. Not as observers, not as quarantined specimens, as equals, as allies, as partners in building a better galaxy. The hall exploded with noise. People stood and cheered. Some cried. The moment they had waited 40 years for had finally come. President Yoon Ji-ho walked to the stage. He was older now, his hair completely gray, but his eyes were bright with emotion. He had fought his whole life for this moment. He shook Yuna's hand. Then he addressed the assembly. 40 years ago, we were told we were not good enough for the galaxy. We were told that our history disqualified us from joining civilized society. His voice was calm but powerful. We could have become bitter. We could have stayed angry forever. Some of us wanted to prove the Coalition wrong by conquering them. He looked at Yuna. Instead, we chose a different path. When the call for help came, we answered. Not for revenge, not for power. We answered because somewhere people were suffering and we could not look away. He accepted the golden symbol from Yuna's hands. Today, we join the Galactic Coalition. We bring our strength, our courage, and yes, our violence, but we also bring our compassion, our determination, our belief that every life matters, no matter what species. He raised the symbol high. We are humanity, and we protect our own. The cheering was so loud, it shook the walls. Later that day, there was a private ceremony. It took place in a quiet garden on the assembly grounds. The audience was small, just a few soldiers and politicians. And one special guest. Private Linari walked slowly. Her wounds had healed, but she would carry scars for the rest of her life. Her left hand was weaker now, damaged from catching that Marak blade. But she did not regret what she had done. Beside her walked a small figure with copper skin and green eyes. The alien child had been given a name by the soldiers who saved it, Little Copper. It had refused to leave Nari's side during the whole evacuation. Even now, months later, it held her hand everywhere they went. Yuna approached them. She knelt down to look at Copper at eye level. "Do you know who this human is?" she asked the child in their shared language. Copper nodded. "She saved me. She fought the bad ones." "Yes, she did." Yuna looked up at Nari. "Privately, on behalf of the Coalition, I want to thank you. What you did for this child showed us what humanity truly is." Nari felt embarrassed. She was not good at receiving praise. "I just did what anyone would do." Yuna shook her head. "No, that is exactly the point. What humans call what anyone would do is something most species in the galaxy would never even consider. You risked your life for a child of a different species. You protected a stranger with your own body. That is not normal. That is extraordinary." Nari did not know what to say, so she just nodded and squeezed Copper's hand a little tighter. Elder Tovin had traveled from Vorus Prime to attend the ceremony. He stood with Sergeant Choi Hana watching the scene. I have lived for over 200 years, Tovin said softly. I have seen many things, but I have never seen a species quite like humans. Hana smiled her wolf smile. Good, we like being special. Tovin laughed. It was a genuine, happy sound. You are more than special. You are exactly what this galaxy needs. When the darkness comes, when hope dies, you are the ones who keep fighting. You are the light that refuses to go out. Hana looked at the sky. It was evening now. The first stars were beginning to appear. The Marak will come back eventually, she said. They'll bring bigger fleets, more soldiers. They'll try to destroy Earth. Yes, Tovin agreed, they will. Hana's smile grew wider. Good, we'll be ready. In the years that followed, the galaxy would learn what Earth had always known. Humanity was violent, yes. Dangerous, yes. But that violence was not a curse. It was a gift. A gift that they used to protect everyone they cared about. And as they joined the coalition, as they took their place among the stars, they made one thing very clear. They cared about everyone. When the darkness came, when alien hearts lost hope, when all seemed lost and there was nowhere to turn, Earth's warriors would always answer the call. They would drop from the sky, and they would never, ever give up.